before starting, there's a small question for you guys. Like, how many of you use here Android smartphones? Most of you. Okay. And how many of you have an antivirus solution installed in it? Okay. By the way, that doesn't matter at all. So I'll explain why. Yeah. I hope so. So for that, yeah, it's started. Okay. So there's this funny incident that happened in the last conference I went to that was named 2Con. So anyone have seen that public charging points at airports and all where you can plug your phones and charge it? Yeah. So what happened in the conference was like there was a public charging booth where you can charge your phone for like free of cost, and you can directly plug in and your phone will get charged. So what happened at the end of the conference is all the people who used Android smartphones and plugged their phone to charge, their phone got charged, but at the same time, that charging point was instead a laptop sitting in the back and a USB cable attached to it. So it stole all of their data. And at the end of the conference, they have their data revealed in the, like, what are their photos in the SD card and all those other stuff. Yeah, so let's start this talk. Yeah, so something about me. So I'm a mobile security researcher. I have co-founded a company called Atify. And anyone heard of Rediff.com? Yeah, so I used to lead the security team there. So I worked there for like 6 or 8 months. And then I'm a head of research at NAG. So this is an NGO. And then I'm also a member of Null community and web application security researcher. I'm authoring 2 books. And these are some of the websites I found vulnerabilities in. Google, Chrome, and all those. These are some of the trainings and talks I've given at various conferences. Yeah, so the agenda of today. So we'll start off with why should we care about smartphone security? Why not only think about the PC security and network security and all the other security? And then we'll be having a look at the security model in Android and iOS. So before starting this talk, I decided to do only Android because there was only 30 minutes, so I'll cover only Android in this. And then we'll have a look at Android permission model and bypassing it, and then a security feature that Google implemented that is called Google Bouncer. And then something about malware and botnets and all those other stuffs. Yeah, so why smartphones? Because it is everywhere. So all the smartphones you might be carrying might store all of your personal information, which might be even more sensitive than what you store on your laptops. They can be anything related to your private documents or even the corporate documents. So what happens if they get stolen by a malicious hacker? And then again, not much attention is paid to its security by the enterprises right now. Like, enterprises have started paying attention, but still it's not up to the mark. And people love applications. Like, whenever an idea comes to their mind, they need something, so they will go to the App Store or they go to the Play Store and download the application. Yeah. So this is a little bit about Android security model. So it's based on Linux kernel, and the best part here is, like, there's no certificate authority. So if you see over here, this means that any application developer can develop his own applications and can publish to the Google Play, and there is no reviewing process for that. So you can actually create a malware and then publish it to a Google Play. So that malware might be in the name of Angry Birds, which you might download and start to play the application, but that application can contain a backdoor. So this is again a small question for you. So let's say you're downloading an application, and there's 4 scenarios. So the application is asking for internet permission in first of all, and the second application asks for all of the permission, like read contacts, send SMS, receive SMS, boot receiver, and the third application is asking for only read logs permission, and the fourth application is asking for no permission at all. So which of the application would you trust? No permission? Don't trust any app. Okay, so let me tell you. So any of the application you trust can actually steal any sensitive information from your phone and send it remotely over the internet, even if it doesn't ask for read SD card permission or even if it doesn't ask for internet permission. So I'll tell you how. So this is the Android permission model. Like anyone who have used an Android phone and downloaded an application from Google Play, so when you install it, there's a permission screen that shows up. Like this application can receive SMS, send SMS. You might be familiar with that black screen and everything. So this means that anything an application wants to do has to request for a permission, right? And it has to be all or none. Like you can't select between the permission. Like I want this application only to use the internet permission and not the contacts permission. And the best part is it can be bypassed. So there was a flaw in Android permission model. So there was a permission called read SD card. And that permission allowed an application to read content from the SD card. But instead, the fact was SD card could be read without any permission at all. And any application can take any content from the SD card and open up the browser and send all the information to a remote location. No need of SD card permission, no need of internet permission. So this was patched in, I think, Android version 4.0. So let's move on to Android malwares. So these are some of the statistics of Android malwares. Like in recent trends, we have seen that Android app malware rates jump 40%. And then again in the Fortinet, it goes out of control and all. And this is the last year growth of the Android malwares. And this is this types of Android malwares. Like what are the malware authors after? So the first one you see is the premium service abuser. So that is the main source of revenue for any Android malware. So they install in your phone, subscribe to a premium rated service, and then charge you like $5 to $20 for a single SMS that gets sent in the background, and you don't even know about it. And then there are some data stealers and adwares and all. So let's say, how about a malware in Google Play? So like I said, there is no certificate authority, and you can develop your own malware and publish to Play Store. But Google actually saw this, like a lot more malwares are being published into Google Market. So it developed a concept of Google Bouncer. So what Google tried to do is every time you submit an application to Google Play Store, it will run it in a virtual device or a virtual phone and analyze it for 5 minutes and then check whether it is malicious or not. So can anyone suggest any bypass for this? Like how to bypass Google Bouncer? Yeah? Update? Right. And? Yeah. You were also saying something? Right. So there are actually two bypasses. Like you publish an app to Google Market, that is a completely legitimate application, no malicious activity. And once the user downloads the application, then submit an update. Or the other way is you create it in such a way that nothing gets executed for 10 to 15 minutes, and once the user install it, then start your malicious service after 15 minutes. So, and this was proved to be working. So these all bypasses I found last year. And also there was a security researcher called John Oberheid. So he got a reverse shell from Google Bouncer and found out that it was actually an employee's test device which was running this virtual simulation and all. And he can see all the contacts and everything stored on that device. So, and if you see the last point, infect legitimate applications. So how many of you have heard of these games called Angry Birds or Temple Run? Most of you, right? So apart from the original version of the application from Rovio Entertainment, there were 30 different versions of Angry Birds, like Angry Birds, some other edition or premium levels or all those kind of stuff. And that way by different publishers. And you can even find it in other like blogs and torrents and all the other places. So what those applications did is they were the original Angry Birds application installed with a malicious service. So once you download the application and start to run it, you can play the original game, but in the background, all your information will be sent to the attacker. And that data will include like your contacts, call logs, conversations, everything. Yeah, so what does the malware do? Not much, just steals contacts, call logs, messages, records your phone conversations, steal your banking password, create a backdoor, runs automatically and start up. So this is not that scary, right? Or is it? And yes, obviously sends SMS to premium members, $5 to 20 per message, and like 10 to 20 messages per day. This is a sample botnet which is open source, like you can download it and create your own botnet service. So if you have a look at the options, you can reboot the device, shut down, remove screen protection, install APK as system app, take a screenshot. Everything you can do on your phone can be done remotely. So before this open source project came out, I also made a framework called Android Framework for Exploitation. So with that particular framework, you can create your own automated malware within less than 5 to 6 seconds. And I submitted that malware sample to some of the antivirus vendors, and till date, 20% of the antivirus vendors have not yet detected it. So that's pretty surprising to me. And then there's this another tool called Metasploit. So with this, you can also create a malicious APK and then get a remote shell to execute all kinds of commands like PS, and then take a picture from the phone's camera and store it. And then this is one of the most interesting Android malware toolkit that was being sold in the underground forums. The name was Perkley, and it targeted banks all over the world. And the main purpose of this particular malware was to bypass the two-factor authentication used by banks. So every time you do a transaction or something, you enter your username and password on the website, and then a code gets sent to your phone, right? The one-time password. So this particular malware actually receives the code and sends it to a different number, and you won't actually get the code in your inbox. And most of the banks, target banks, were in Australia, France, India, Italy, and Germany. And if you're familiar with the banks in India, the most targeted banks in India were SBI, PNB, HDFC, and ICICI. So it also stole a lot of consumer info. So it came in two packages. Like first, it infected the laptop of the user, and then if the user sometime connects the phone via USB, it will also infect the phone. So it gets the username, password, it also gets the one-time password. And this is the another way, AndroRat. So this is also an open source project. You can create a malicious application and get all GUI and get all the information like contacts, call logs, call monitor, picture viewer, everything. And recently, after the failure of Google Bouncer, Google also launched the Google App Verification. How many of you have seen this screen in your phone? Okay. So if you install your application from third-party store or which are not there in Google Play, you will be seeing this particular app verification thing. So in this, the APK or the application gets sent to Google servers, and then Google verifies it, and then it displays whether it is a malicious one or a legitimate one. And then one of the security researchers did an analysis on this. So these are the total number of malwares being detected by different antiviruses. The first is the Google App Verification, and the rest are commercial anti-malwares. So less than 25% were detected by Google App Verification out of the total number of malware samples. So this is how efficient the Google App Verification was, right? And then around 1 or 2 months back, this WebView exploit came in. So even if you're using Android version 4.3 or something, and you use any of the application that has an ad library in it, like AdMob or something, or any game that displays ads, or any free application, so this particular exploit was there in the WebView component of Android. So if an attacker gets to your network and does a man-in-the-middle attack, he can do all kind of stuff with your phone if a free application which uses the ad library is installed in your phone. So this could include sending SMS, making calls, installing another package, setting up a backdoor, stealing sensitive information, everything. And who were vulnerable? Like 8 out of 10 ad libraries, and they were the most famous ones. And like all of the popular ones. And almost 95% of the entire Android users were vulnerable, right? So I think it's time you should move to other mobile platforms than Android. Yeah, so this is what I said, like what could be done, possibly done with no permission? It could steal all your sensitive photos and documents from SD card, less than Android version 4.0. So let's have a look at some common Android application vulnerabilities. How many of you develop or your company develop any Android applications? Okay. So some of the common Android application vulnerabilities are leaking content providers. So this is the vulnerability which was found in most popular applications like Facebook, Dropbox, Adobe. And with this vulnerability, if your application is accessing some content from the phone, like Adobe Reader, what it does is like it searches the phone for PDFs and displays it, right? So using this vulnerability of Adobe Reader, other application could use this vulnerability and get access to any content in the phone. And then there is insecure data storage. So you are storing file insecurely with all other kinds of malicious, like insecure permissions, just like in Linux. And then you have unencrypted data traffic transmission. And the last one is SQL injection. So most of the web application vulnerabilities also work in Android because Android also uses a SQLite database, right? And then there was another famous Android malware called android.obat.a. So this is one of the most complicated malwares Android has ever seen. So it was a fully botnet service which is installed itself in legitimate application, and it is infected more than around 40 legitimate applications, all the popular ones, and it uploaded all of them to Google Play with different publisher names. And once it gets installed, it tries to make itself the device administrator. So once it gets the device administrator permission, you can't uninstall it, and you can't even kill the application, right? And the best part is, all the malware researchers which were trying to reverse this particular malware and like find out what this malware is doing, it also exploited a vulnerability as Android reversing tools. So there's a tool called Dex2Jar and APK tool. So those are the two most common tools to reverse Android application. And this particular malware find a security vulnerability or a bug in those tools and exploited them. So the malware reversers were not able to reverse this application in the first place. And then even if malwares are getting so much complicated day by day, not even like all malware authors are so smart. Like I was reversing a new malware sample one day, like a month back, and I found out something. Like that particular malware, you gathered all the contact information, call logs, everything, and send it to his Gmail account. And what I found in the code is this thing. So this is his username, and this is his password. So he had his own Gmail account username and password in the malware, and that was working. So if the malware authors can't code their app securely, how can you expect the normal application developers to code? So if you're an enterprise, what if someone has injected a malware in your enterprise application? Like suppose there's a banking application, and there's another version of banking application in the Google Play. So if someone searches for a bank's name, he gets two applications, and it doesn't know which one is the legitimate one. Like if my bank's name is bank, simply bank, there could be two applications, one with the publisher name, the bank name, and the second with bank corporation. So how will a user distinguish between those two applications? So to overcome that, make sure you use anti-tampering preventions. Like there are commercial tools like Dasho, ProGuard. So with this, if you integrate this in your application, any malware author won't be able to inject any malicious codes in your application. So these are one of the best tools. Like Dasho is a commercial one, and ProGuard and DexGuard are the free ones. Or you could even develop your own. and then bypassing anti-malwares. So even a child can do it, it's really easy. And you can obtain a zero detection with a public malware, like which has been detected by all of the anti-malwares, and you can make it fully undetectable within 5 minutes. And this is mostly due to the static nature of Android anti-malwares. So I tried to analyze Android anti-malwares, like reverse their code, studied how they used to work, and then I found out something. Like these are the 4 most common ways Android anti-malwares work. Like most of them match the signature with their database. And the second thing is they check the internal activities, like what are the screen names and the other icon names and everything. And then they check the name of the variables inside the code. And finally they check the control flow graph, like which function is calling which other function and how is the process going on. So to overcome that, you can simply decompile the application and then recompile again, so the signature will change, right? So you can easily bypass all the signature based anti-malwares, and if they are checking the activity service or other class names, you can simply modify the class name and all its references to some other value. And then if it checks the name of the variables, this is what I did something interesting. Like if a variable name is something called some, like what do you call, like security, and the malware, anti-malware is detecting the security as a flag that it's a malware. So what I did is I split the variables into 2 parts, like variable A equals to security, and that is being detected. So I'll make variable B equals to secu, SECU, and variable C equals to RITY, and at the runtime just append those 2 values. So you can easily bypass all the name checks of the variables. And then finally, if it checks for how the processes are going, how each function is calling the next function, you could add few dummy goto loops. Like you could modify the control flow graph. So this was a public malware, and the detection was 30 out of 46 anti-malwares. Like 30 anti-malwares detected it out of the total of 46 anti-malwares. And then after writing like around 60 lines of Python code, the detection was brought down to 4 out of 46. So easily 36, how much? 26 of the anti-malwares were bypassed in less than an hour. So how to be safe? So try to avoid applications from third-party app stores. Like if you find a cracked version of a genuine application, don't download it if it's from a Chinese app market or a Russian app market or from a blog or something. And make sure you turn your USB debugging always to off, because that's one of the main attack vectors for your Android device. And antivirus vendors should start switching to the dynamic analysis instead of just looking at the variable names and all the other class names. And if you allow BYOD in your application enterprise, just make sure you check the security before allowing it, because BYOD also brings a lot of security threats. So I think a lot has been discussed on BYOD earlier, so I'll just skip the point. And then if you have any questions, you can ask me now or later after the session, or you could just email me. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.